Okay, we're back again here at the Greatest Sports Channel, and this is the second video on the new book that I wrote called Leatherheads, which is on the history of football. I went back to 1923, and the scoring system I used to rank all the greatest players in history, given that you had linemen and you had quarterbacks and receivers, and not everybody has stats, so I had to use a subjective method. I gave everybody 1 point for every time they made first or second all-team, all-pro, and 2 points for every MVP, 2 points for Defensive Player of the Year, 2 points for a Super Bowl MVP, and 2 points for being Heisman winner. So the scoring was very difficult to accumulate points, and veered more towards people that had long careers, which was fitting because football is such a violent game. It's difficult to have a lengthy career. So the number one player of all time, as we mentioned in the first video, was Peyton Manning. And for his career, well, he had 5 MVPs, and he had over a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, including last year. In 2013, he had 55 touchdowns and 10 interceptions with a quarterback rating of 115, and threw for almost 5,500 yards. So he just had an unbelievable career. Never missed a game except for the one season that he had the neck surgery, and always had over 20 touchdowns in a season. Let's see. Always had over 25 touchdowns every single season of his career. Never had more than 17 interceptions. Actually, he had one year where he had 23 interceptions in 2001. But he had 55 touchdowns last year, 37 the year before. He had 49 touchdowns in 2004 with only 10 picks and a quarterback rating of 121. Second best player of all time is Joe Montana. He was a 4-time Super Bowl champ and a 2-time MVP. Also was a national champion and went to the Pro Bowl 8 times. Had a career quarterback rating of 92.3. Almost had a 2-to-1 quarterback to touchdown touchdown to interception ratio. His best year was probably 89. He played 13 games. He had 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he had a completion percentage that year of 70.2. Had another year where he was 71.4. Oh, I'm sorry, he only played one game that year. I think, yes, that's when Steve Young came in, and then the next year he ended up going to Kansas City. Lawrence Taylor is the third best player of all time. 2-time Super Bowl champ, 10-time Pro Bowler, 1-time league MVP, and 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Had 132.5 sacks. Reggie White, fourth best, 13 Pro Bowls, Defensive Player of the Year twice, 2-time Super Bowl champ, had 198 sacks. Bruce Smith at 5, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and is the all-time leader at sacks with 200. Ray Lewis at 6, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 13-time Pro Bowler, 3-time AFC Defensive Player of the Year, and was 2-time All-American. Johnny Unitas is 7th. Had a low touchdown to interception ratio. For his career, he had 290 touchdowns and 253 interceptions, but he was a 4-time MVP. He ranked very high, 7th of all time. 8th place was very surprising to me. Brett Favre, 11-time Pro Bowler, 3-time MVP. He is the all-time interception leader. He has 336 interceptions in his career. He had 508 touchdowns. In 2009, he had an unbelievable year, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions with a 107.2 quarterback rating. Had an 86 quarterback rating for his career. Had many years where he was over 30 touchdowns in a season and had a very long career. Jim Brown is 9. For his entire career, he averaged over 100 yards rushing um, per game. In 58 and a 12 game season, he had 17 touchdowns, averaged 127 yards per game, 5.9 average on the ground. For his career, he averaged 5.2. I think that might be the all-time leader. Retired at a young age. In 1965, that was last year, in 14 games, he had 17 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry, and 110 yards per game. Also had 34 receptions. Let's see, going on to the 10th best player, Jerry Rice, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 13-time Pro Bowler, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year, all-time leader in touchdowns with 208, and also all-time leader in receiving yards with 22,895. A lot of people argue that Jerry Rice may be the best player of all time. We have him at 10. 11, we have Mike Singletary. 12, Barry Sanders. He also retired at a young age. He had 99 touchdowns in his career, averaged 5 yards a carry for his entire career, and 99.8 yards per game. He had one season in 94 where he averaged 117 yards per game and 5.7 yards per carry. Let's see, one year he even averaged 6.1 yards per carry. And 97, he had 2,053 yards, 11 touchdowns that year, and averaged 128 yards a game. Plus, he also had 33 receptions that year. Joe Green was at 13, 4-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He was also Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1969. 14 is Steve Young. He was a first-team All-American. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. 7-time Pro Bowl selection, 3-time Super Bowl champ. He was a Super Bowl MVP. He was a league MVP twice. He's in the Hall of Fame. His touchdown to interception ratio was over 2-1. 232 touchdowns, 107 interceptions, 96.8 quarterback rating for his career, and 64.3 completion percentage for his entire career. I'm curious here. Brett Favre's completion percentage for his career was 62%, so it was also very good. Let's see. We had Bruce Matthews, guard, was 15. He was a 14-time Pro Bowl selection, 10-time All-Pro. Alan Page at 16. He was a 4-time NFC champion, 11-time first-team All-Conference, 6-time All-Pro selection. He was Defensive Player of the Year in 70, and in 71 was the NFL MVP. 17, we had Merlin Olsen. 18 was Mel Hine, a guy I didn't know. Was the best center of all time. In 15 years, he never missed a down. So I thought that was amazing. Elway we have at 19. He has 300 touchdowns in his career with 226 picks. Only a 79.9 quarterback rating, and his completion percentage was 56.9. But he had some very good seasons late in his career when he won the Super Bowl and beat the Packers. 20 was Marcus Allen. Only averaged 55 yards per game for his career. Did have 1 year in 85 where he averaged 109 yards a game and 11 touchdowns he had that year. Also had 67 receptions in that year. Had a lot of receptions, many years. 4 years in a row, it looks like. 3 years in a row over 60. So he had a good all-around game. Don Hudson, we had at 21. 8-time first team All-Pro in the 30s and 40s. 3-time NFL champ. They didn't have as many receptions back then. Usually he would get anywhere from 40 to 50 receptions. In 1942 he had 74 receptions and 17 touchdowns that year. Let's see, other players of interest. Tom Brady's at 23. He's a 3-time Super Bowl MVP and a 2-time NFL MVP. His touchdowns to interception ratio is very good, maybe the best in history. 359 touchdowns, only 134 interceptions. Quarterback rating of 95.7. Completion percentage of 63.4%. In 2007, he had just an unbelievable year. 50 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions. 117 quarterback rating and threw for over 4,800 yards. Also in 2012, threw for over 4,800 yards, 34 touchdowns, only 8 picks, with a quarterback rating of 98.7. Dan Marino was at 24, 420 touchdowns, only 252 picks, so very good ratio. In 86, had 44 touchdowns, 23 picks. In 84, 48 touchdowns, 17 picks with a quarterback rating of 108.9. Let's see if I can find some other quarterbacks. Let's see. Well, we got Peyton at 27, Walter Payton. For his career, he averaged 88 yards a game. He had 110 rushing touchdowns and 4.4 yards per carry for his career. Also was a very good receiver. Almost always had 40 or 50 receptions in a year. So that's a quick introduction again to some of the specifics of the book that I wrote called Leatherheads.